Hello everyone, my name is Richie and welcome back to another video. Today you join me on another speculation video because there's been a lot of rumours swirling, isn't there, about Train Sim World 5. We've got a few things coming up like the Dovetail Direct, we've had a couple of leaks going around, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to use this time to do a little bit of speculating, talk about, if we was to get Train Sim World 5, what would we get? What sort of routes could we see? Would we see, similar to Train Sim World 4's release, would we have a standard and a deluxe with 2 Loco DLCs? All that sort of stuff. So yeah, let's jump on into it and do a little bit of speculating. So yeah, before we go into it, I've made like a little PowerPoint presentation similar to the what you can expect sort of videos. I'm going to talk about the 3 core routes, what we could expect to see from Train Sim World 5 if we got it, and talk a little bit at the end about why. And my sort of opinion on why are we getting a Train Sim World and what I would want instead. Anyway, so let's jump on into it. Of course, disclaimer, this is all speculation, none of this is confirmed, and if you disagree with any of my opinions or points or route suggestions or whatever, then let me know in the comments. I want to kind of start a bit of a discussion. What sort of routes do you want to see? What's your thoughts on whether we'd see a Train Sim World 5? Let me know in the comments. Let's jump into it. So what do we know so far? There's obviously been a lot of leaks, there's been a lot of discussions, and we've obviously got the key thing, which is the Dovetail Direct, which is August the 20th. Now, of course, last year, around this time of year, we did see a Dovetail Direct for around end August time, and it turned out to be the announcement of Train Sim World 4. What I find quite interesting is that this was announced in the roadmap, the Train Sim World 4 roadmap, and the new pieces of content to be announced in the Dovetail Direct are on the Train Sim World 4 roadmap, which didn't happen last year. So it kind of begs the question of, will we see a Train Sim World 5, or is it maybe like a Rush Hour 2.0, a big summer release? We don't know. One key thing that people are pointing towards is that on Discord, someone found in the, I think it's in the Epic Games store, there is code for a new base game made by Dovetail, and it's been given the title Gershwin. Of course, last year there was another one, I can't remember what it was called, but it was called Codename General Audience, which turned out to be Train Sim World 4. So the fact that we've got another code name and general audience kind of makes you think, okay, maybe we could be getting another game. And of course, the fact that it says base game, all fingers are sort of pointing to a new game of some variety. But a lot of people have said it could be a new fishing game, because that's obviously what Dovetail do as well, so you never know. So this is a big one that people are pointing towards, and this is taken from Focus Entertainment. This is, I think, a PowerPoint they've done towards their shareholders, and you can see there, it says every 12 months there would be a core Dovetail Train Sim World base game release. Interestingly, you've got the components that are made for more or one version of a game, Dovetail only, 36 months. So it's either going to be 12 months that we see a new base game, or maybe every 36 months. I'm not too sure what to read from that, but a lot of people are jumping onto the fact that it says quite blatantly every 12 months we'll get a new Train Sim World base game. And of course, the last thing is this leak of a loading screen, which is, I think, maybe fake, if I'm honest. I think someone's made this, and a lot of people have kind of thought, it's very much, well, it's the training centre for one. It's a training centre, and it's kind of a simple Photoshop, some people have said. So I think this is fake, but it looks quite convincing. So just to reiterate, Dovetail Direct is going to be live streamed on August the 20th with 6 new DLCs announced. I don't know whether that's going to include the unnamed UK and German route. We'll see what happens with that. Obviously got the new game entry on Epic Games with the Gershwin code name. Got the Focus Entertainment PowerPoint stating that Train Sim World is an annual product. And of course we've got a TSW5 load screen quote-unquote leak. So there's still a lot of questions around this. It could be a case that we may just get a Rush Hour 2.0 and all this Train Sim World 5 leak, someone's made it just to stir up the pot a little bit. So, nothing's confirmed, and there's still a lot of questions because there's a lot of unused Steam depots. And if you don't know what a Steam depot is, it's basically where each DLC gets assigned its own sort of like code, and people can usually tell what route that's going to be by the size of it, because you can see it being updated live, and you can see how big it's going to be, and how many times it gets updated, and then once it goes from being in Dovetail's hands to it being shipped out, they call it shipping despite the fact it's being uploaded to like Steam or whatever. It's all quite technical, but yeah, there's a lot of them free for a lot of DLC for Train Sim World 4, so sort of like a lot of people are thinking, are those Steam depots going to be used, and are we going to continue to see Train Sim World 4 be extended for another year? There's a lot of question marks around it. Anyway, with all that being said, let's just pretend Train Sim World 5 is going to be a thing. Or, if there is going to be some form of summer release, core free routes, which I believe there's going to be. So let's sort of speculate what we could get. And that's a nice segue into what could we see from a potential Train Sim World 5 or Rush Hour 2.0. Could we see certain routes, certain features? Let's have a look. So I'm thinking we could see the standard free routes, a UK, a North American and a German. I'm going to say North American, I'm going to come on to this pretty much straight away. 2 Loco DLCs, so similar to how you had the Flying Scotsman and the Vectron as part of the Deluxe Edition. They'll try and come up with some new game features. I personally don't know how or what they could do. Maybe like a new UI. Potentially, I'm thinking they might bring in the subscription model, which they brought in for TSC. I hope they don't, but it could be a thing. Of course, there'll be standard and deluxe editions. And I'm thinking if we do get something like Train Sim World 5, it'll be released mid to end of September. I'm thinking maybe like the 17th of September, because that's about 4 weeks after the Tuftel Direct. So, my route predictions for, let's just say this is for a summer core bundle of routes, so whether it's Train Sim World 5 or not. So this could be like, we're definitely going to get a bundle of routes, no doubt about it. That happens every year. So these are my 3 predictions for what routes we could see. And I'm going to start off in North America, because a lot of you probably got a few question marks as to why has he not said US. I'm going to suggest, or I'm going to predict, that we're going to get a Canadian route. And I don't think it's going to be a new one. I think it's going to be an extension of the Canadian Oakville subdivision route. And we're going to see the full Lakeshore, well, I said a full, part of the Lakeshore West line, which is Toronto Union to Hamilton and West Harbour, with the Go Transit MP36PH and the CN GP38-2. So a part of this route we do already have in Train Sim World, which is the Oakville subdivision, which is this sort of area down here, Oakville down to Hamilton. I don't know if it goes to West Harbour, I don't actually have the route. But I have a feeling, and there was a hint in the Suffragette line where it blatantly looks like it's like a billboard with a skyline on it, and the skyline looks pretty much spot on to be in Toronto. So I thought maybe we could see like a Toronto commuter or whatever, and I thought what makes the most sense is to kind of reuse something that already exists, because they did the similar thing with New York Trenton, where they reused the Penn to Newark International section and then extended it. I feel like we could see the same thing here. I feel like it'd be a decent route. It gives me vibes of the San Bernardino line, obviously with the MP36. This route would go on to Niagara Falls for like another 30 miles, but that offers like 2 stations and not that much gameplay, so I'd imagine they'd end it at West Harbour and Hamilton. Like I mentioned, we'd get the MP36PH, which I know is already a Loco we already have, in the form of the Caltrain and eventually the Metrolink one. But it makes sense for them to, reuse something that they've already got. A lot of people have asked for it, and also they've completely taken off. They were going to add on Caltrain as playable services on Oakville subdivision, the MP36, but they've completely scrapped that idea. And routes take about a year to make, so they scrapped it about a year ago. Kind of, it all adds up, doesn't it? So I think we could see that. There we go, there's a lovely little picture of the cab cars with the Toronto skyline. So that's the skyline, I'm pretty sure, is in that billboard. And I think on the billboard it says, you asked, we delivered, or something like that. And it says like Season 2 or something stupid like that, which could lead to the whole Rush Hour 2.0 and whatever else. But yeah, the Toronto skyline, that's what it looks like in that billboard. Go Transit, Toronto commuter, extension of an existing route, just seems to all add up to me. So there we go, North America, the Lakeshore West line, Toronto Union to Hamilton and West Harbour. It would be 43 miles, roughly. I think it's like 42.9 or something like that, with 13 stations, I think 5 of which we already have. And the rolling stock will be the Go Transit MP36PH, and we'll reuse the CNGP38-2 for freight, which already comes in the Oakville subdivision route. I'm thinking they're going to do an extension of an existing route, because they've done that for Train Sim World 3, they did it with South Eastern High Speed, and they also did like an extension or whatever, but they upgraded Naverka Dresden. So I feel like we're going to see a reused or an updated or extended route that already exists, and this one just seems to make sense. Now, on to my German suggestion. Now, this one I was doing a bit of research for, and I've kind of got into a snowball effect, and I thought this makes sense, this could be good. It's the Filstalbahn. I don't know if that's that's the right pronunciation for it, but it's Stuttgart to Ulm with the DBBR 412, the ICE 4, and the DBBR 146. Now I'm suggesting this because I weren't too sure what to suggest really for the German route. I don't know German railways that well, and I saw this one on the forums, and I thought, you know what, this one looks quite good actually. And then I looked at all the rolling stock, and I believe it's got 111s on it, it's got M-Wagons, it's got 218 services, and I thought, you know what, there's a lot of stock and a lot of images that if you typed this into Google Images, a lot of the stock we've already got, so it sort of like makes you think, well, it kind of fits, doesn't it? It's a decent sized route, it's fully within the scope of a TSW product, and it's also a part of Germany we've not been to yet. And it's also the new Loco, which would be the 412, the ICE 4, would look like a very nice picturesque unit, because there it is. There's the ICE 4. Could be a good route, could be a good Loco to have, adds to the ICE stock, and I think this has been quite heavily requested amongst the German rail fans, so I don't know, something we could see. Obviously this route would come as standard with the 146 for the there's like regional services, but there is also S-Bahn services. I'll come back onto this later on because I've got an interesting prediction for that too. So yeah, the Filstalbahn, is that how you say that? Filstalbahn? I don't know. From Stuttgart to Ulm would be 58 miles and 27 stations. The rolling stock would be the DBBR 412 and the DBBR 146. Could be a decent route, and I'd be quite happy if we saw it. And of course the UK, and it's got to be the West Coast Main Line. Now I've been toying with a lot of different sections of the West Coast Main Line to think what to suggest. Ideally I'd want to see West Coast Main Line South, Euston to Milton Keynes Central, but I feel like that would be a massive product for a TrainSimWorld 4 or TrainSimWorld 5 product. It'd be a bit big. There's a lot of stations, there's a lot of miles, and you'd need both the 350 and the 390. Now I'm going to suggest the Trent Valley section, which would be Rugby to Stafford, which seems random, but I think that is actually a Train Sim Classic route, and it could work because it's a nice length. It's very similar to the East Coast Main Line section we've got in Train Sim World, so it could be a nice little section, and also it works in with the Loco DLC idea, which I'm going to come on to later on, because I'm going to refer to it for the UK and the German route that I've suggested as well. So here you go, this is the Trent Valley portion. Obviously starts down here in Rugby, and then goes up to Stafford via Rugeley, Trent Valley, Lichfield, and wherever else. Decent route, it doesn't offer much, and a lot of people probably wouldn't be happy with this section, but I feel like from a feasibility standpoint, it's either this or maybe like West Coast Main Line over Shap, which would be Preston to Carlisle. But I feel like from a feasibility standpoint, and to bring in the 350, because they've worked on a lot of the zeros lately, so they've got all the reference. I feel like the 350s are going to be a given, and they need to bring in another Loco DLC, which I'll come on to. But yeah, that's the section of the West Coast Main Line I'm suggesting. Obviously, I've talked about the 350 before as being part of the Chase line. Now that we're definitely not getting a filler route, 350 is going to be, the big one, isn't it? Because it's a commuter Loco, it's going to call at every stop, and also it's what you'd see at either end of the route. Maybe they could add some stuff onto Birmingham Cross City. Maybe at some point in, let's say, TrainSimWorld 5's life cycle over the next year, we could see a remastered Birmingham Cross City with the 730s. It can open a whole new can of worms, and we could have like a whole new timetable which brings in the 350s and the other Loco DLC that I'm going to suggest. So yeah, West Coast Mainline Trent Valley, which would be 51 miles and 8 stations. They could probably go a little bit further, potentially maybe to Crewe. That's an idea I played with, so Rugby to Crewe, which would be about 80 miles. Also, it could just go to Rugby to Stafford and Stoke-on-Trent, which would be another 2 stations and about another 25 miles, because a lot of the West Coast Mainline Trent Valley services do terminate at Stoke-on-Trent, which would be quite cool. You could see the East Midlands Trains 158 there. There's different ideas. The core rolling stock for this route as well would be the London North Western Class 350 and the EWS Class 66. And just before we go on to the Loco predictions, just a couple of honourable mentions. North America, the New Haven line, with the whole Gershwin thing, there's a song or a composition of his called An American in Paris, which, he's from New York, so New Haven line, it's sort of like the New York area, isn't it? So that could be a route we'd see. And of course the San Bernardino line, which is already been announced. We already know about that, and I wouldn't put it past them to include it as the core 3 routes, to be honest. Going back to Europe, maybe the Berlin S-Bahn. I looked into this and I thought it'd be a really cool idea, but the S-Bahn trains can only be used in and around Berlin, and I don't imagine they'd do multiple routes in Berlin so close together, so I kind of ruled that one out. And also going back to the whole Gershwin thing, the Paris Metro, maybe, Focus Entertainment is a French company, they could have a French operator license now that we don't know about. Could see the Paris Metro works with the whole Gershwin thing. I don't know. That's just a suggestion. And of course for the UK, I'm sticking with the West Coast Main Line thing. We've got to see the West Coast Main Line. If we don't, I would be disappointed. I think we've had the East Coast Main Line. West Coast Main Line's got to be the next one now that everyone's asking for. So out of those, obviously, I know that North Wales Coastline isn't the West Coast Main Line technically. It veers off it. But that could be a solid route with maybe the Avanti West Coast Voyages. There's a lot of rumours that is it Alan Thompson Simulation? He's doing that, or they're doing that. But the other UK route would be West Coast Main Line South. Euston to Milton Keynes Central. That would be an absolute solid route, and I think it's kind of feasible. It's a lot more stations. It's about 25, 26 stations, and that's not including the ones on the Bakerloo line, which would run for about 10, 12 miles, which I know already exist, but yeah, I think it's a lot of work to weave it all in. And it would be a pretty big timetable, because you'd have Southern 377s, you'd have the 710, you'd obviously have the 350s, and you'd also have another Loco, which I'm coming on to in a minute. Anyway, with that said, let's jump on to my Loco predictions. So obviously, if we was to get a deluxe edition, we'd have 2 Locos, and I weren't too sure what to suggest here, to be honest. I know last time we got a Freight Loco and a Rail Tour Loco, so I'm thinking, from an operational standpoint, we'd need something to fill in the S-Bahn, and we'd need S-Bahn on the German route, and we'd need something to fill into the intercity duties on the UK route. You're probably seeing where I'm going with this. So the first Loco I'm suggesting as a Loco DLC is the 420. I know that this was meant to be a TSG product, but it's completely gone off the roadmap now, and TSG themselves have admitted they don't know where it's going to go. The work's done, but they don't know where it's going to go. So I feel like it's a product maybe Dovetail have picked back up, because I believe a guy from TSG works at Dovetail. He just does his own projects here and there. So maybe they've picked it back up and they're going to make it a DLC, a Loco DLC for the Filstalbahn, which would run on the Stuttgart S-Bahn, and then obviously they may bring it into the Kalnaken timetable or the Hauptstrecke Munich to Augsburg timetable and rework one of them, similar to how they reworked Naverka Dresden last year. So kind of adds all that sort of possibility in. And of course, the UK Loco would be the Class 390 Pendolino. Now, I feel like doing it as a Loco DLC, some people might get a bit annoyed and be like, why didn't you do the 350 and the 390 as part of one route? That's a lot of work to do. And let's be real, they've only done one UK route since East Coast Main Line. They've done, what's it called now? Suffragette Line. Just Trains did Blackpool branches. So we've only had one relatively small UK route. So from a selling point and from a resource point, they would have had time to do 2 Locos for a UK route, but obviously it makes sense to sell them one as a Loco DLC, just looking at it from a business point of view. So I feel like we could see the 390. Maybe this is something that could then be layered back into Cathcart Circle, Birmingham Cross City, over time. So they'd have the Pendolino and they could use that to their heart's content in future routes that cross the West Coast Main Line. And to be honest, I think the 390, just as a standalone product, would sell pretty darn well. So something we could see. So with the route and Loco predictions and suggestions put to one side, what about my opinion on Train Sim World 5? Is it something I want to see, or is it something that I'd rather, I'd live without? Just a couple of points really on my opinion. I'm not too fussed about new iterations, to be honest. I think we should have stuck with Train Sim World 2 or 3. I kind of get the jump from Train Sim World 2 to 3, because obviously it was the new lighting and whatever else, and a couple of new features. The jump to Train Sim World 3 to 4 offered so much new stuff, the editor, and the routes for Train Sim World 4 have just been incredible. So I kind of get the jump, but I just don't know what the next jump could be. Train Sim World 5, I'm sure they'll think of something. I'm not too good with game development, so I'm sure they would have thought of something. But ultimately, I'm not too fussed. I'm expecting to be a summer bundle and to pay 30-40 quid for a bundle of routes. I'm not bothered about that at all. If anything, I get quite excited for this time of year because I'm thinking, oh, what sort of new routes could they bring out? And they always do a solid selection of routes, to be fair. So yeah, I'm not too fussed about seeing a new iteration. The one thing I'm not a fan of is the re-downloading of routes. And for me, it's not an issue. I've got decent internet, but for those out there that don't have good internet, downloading almost 200 gigabytes worth of routes if you own everything can take days. And that's just not good for loyal customers. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into this, you know, into playing this game, and they dedicate a lot of their time to this game. So having to re-download everything, and in some cases we've not had progress come across, and to a lot of players that's, you know, so detrimental to their experience. So that's what I'm not a fan of. I would also prefer just to stick to Train Sim World 4. I feel like Train Sim World 4 could live on for another year, same with like Train Sim World 2 did. I feel like there's still so much more to offer, and there's still a lot of like bugs and stuff that have not been fixed. And obviously editors only just becoming a thing, so having to scrap it all and do another edit of Train Sim World 5, I don't know, it just seems to be a bit of a logistical nightmare to me. So it leads me back onto what I was talking about earlier. Why not Rush Hour 2.0? You know, I know that Rush Hour, when they did it, it was a solid pack. That was a brilliant pack, but obviously there was a lot of complications and resource management and a few things that went wrong, and then the whole engine upgrade messed a few things up. They've learnt from that now. They don't have to do that again. They could just do a bundle of routes, and most people are going to get it, let's be real. If it's a decent selection of routes, people are going to get it. So I know that by kind of forcing people to get a new iteration of the game, it's a bit of a... It's sort of like a definite income, whereas people, if they have the option to potentially not buy a route or buy a bundle of routes, they can just carry on their merry way. I don't know. It then begs the question of the whole thing of like the whole Japanese route that people have been excited for, the Tadami line, the Class 158 5 timetable, and the Leven branch. Is that all going to become Train Sim World 5 and locked behind a paywall? And that will cause all sorts of chaos amongst the community, and a lot of people will get annoyed by that. To me, I'm not bothered. I'm going to get Train Sim World 5 or whatever it is anyway, because I feel like the routes are going to be good. I've just got a gut feeling. But yeah, I can sympathise with people that, you know, are thinking, well, why? On a similar sort of beat, if it is an annual release, why not maybe like Train Sim World 2025, 2026, similar to how they did it with Train Sim World Classic, and, you know, Train Sim World 2020 was a thing. So sort of like set us up for knowing that we're going to get a new game every year, instead of the speculation is fun, but we could speculate on the routes as opposed to the game itself. Having the time to speculate on the routes could be a lot more fun than a whole thing of, are we going to get Train Sim World 5? Oh no, I don't want to see Train Sim World 5. I'm not going to bother with Train Sim World 5. They've not fixed bugs from blah 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 blah. We could expect there'd be a new iteration every year, but, you know, we can then focus on what routes can they bring out, and, you know, the community would probably have a better outlook if we expected there to be a new iteration every year, if that makes sense. Sort of in the similar breath to F1 and FIFA, you know, they come out every year, and people have just kind of got used to that and accept that now. And people are usually not fussed by that, you know, there's new iterations every year for that. It's become an expected thing. So, you know, setting people up to expect that could do the world of good. And again, going back to what I was saying, I'm not too sure what new features could be offered. I'm sure they'll think of something, but I can't really think, other than maybe multiplayer, guard mode, things like that. But I don't imagine they'd bring things in like that. Not things that would work straight away anyway. And of course, to round it all off, it kind of just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to do a new iteration so soon. I feel like there's still so much they can achieve with Train Sim World 4 that they wouldn't need to. But I don't know how the business works, and I don't know, you know, what sort of targets, financial, and whatever else they need to reach. So, from a player's point of view, you know, it doesn't make sense to me, but to them it might make perfect sense. But I mean, overall, I'm gonna still get it because I want a bundle of routes. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing what they offer. I just feel like there's a lot of question marks still on it, but we'll see what happens. You know, we could be getting way ahead of ourselves here. We may be, you know, completely barking up the wrong tree, and we're getting Rush Hour 2.0 or whatever else. We'll see what happens. But I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to see what's coming out in the next few months. About 5 weeks to wait. And in the meantime, I want to speculate on what we could see, as opposed to will we see a Train Sim World 5? You know, what routes could we see? So yeah. So yeah, on to my final thoughts. Before that though, do you think we will see Train Sim World 5, or what would you prefer to see? Would you prefer to see Train Sim World 4 continued? Would you prefer to see Rush Hour 2.0? Does it completely outrage you? Let me know in the comments. Obviously, within reason, just let's have a sensible discussion about it. As for my final thoughts, whatever it is, I'm going to get it. I'm expecting the bundle to be about 40 quid. You know, regardless if you get a bundle of routes or a new iteration, it's going to cost around the same. So, you know, you're not going to lose out financially. It's just a case that when there's future routes behind a paywall, then you do have to do that 40 quid jump first. So we'll see what happens. But I mean, I'm excited to see what's coming out. I'm eagerly waiting over the next 5 weeks to see what happens. But I won't be surprised if it is a Train Sim World 5 announcement. But if that's the case, it is what it is. I'll end up getting it. We'll forget about it for like 6 months, and then in a year's time it'll be Train Sim World 6 and it'll be the whole thing again. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this speculation video. Let me know what you think and what you want to see in the comments. Let's start a bit of a discussion, and you know, if there's certain opinions that you lot have, within reason, let's let Dovetail know how we think about Train Sim World 5. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please smash that like button and subscribe. If you're new, I'd massively appreciate it. So thank you very much for watching. I'll hopefully see you all in the next video. Bye bye.